Hello and welcome to America Decides. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eche Sikanku, and as we said earlier, this show, this segment is to track the American presidential process, which has already started. There's a lot of action going on. There's a lot of drama, a lot of theater. Of course, wherever Donald Trump is involved, you can expect that. And so the goal of this program is to make sure we are tracking the process and bringing some awareness, some understanding, some insights into the process. Because, of course, when America coughs, the rest of the world catches a cold. And so whatever happens there has an impact in this part of the world. So America Decides, the purpose of it is to make sure that we are tracking this particular process. So what's happening in the US now? Well, America is at the crossroads. Never has the nation faced such unprecedented circumstances. Never has the nation been in such uncharted waters. And that is because there are things happening before that has really never happened in the history of the country. Donald Trump, the former president of a country, is facing no less than 96 federal felony charges. No president, living or dead, Democratic or Republican, current or former, has faced that. But perhaps even more importantly for all of us and the rest of the world, never has the concept of democracy come under such intense scrutiny. There's a lot of conversation about the decline of democracy even in the US. There's conversations about threats to democracy, not just in the United States, but in other parts of the world. There are conversations about democratic recession. And that is why a program like this is really important, because it's not just focusing on the US, but also on the idea of democracy, with America being one of the foremost leaders of democracy. And so very important to put the spotlight over there. In fact, from South Africa to Botswana, to India, to Mexico, and even to Rwanda, there are as many as 64 elections taking place all over the world. This actually represents a combined population of about 49% of the people in the world going to the polls, including Ghana, of course. Our neighbor Togo is also going to the polls. We know what's happening in Senegal as well. And so some people have called it the super year of elections. We hope you tune in every Thursday to join us on this segment of a program, and of course in all the other programs. With that said, however, that's a little intro. Well, maybe not so little. But with that said, we can now turn back to the very central issue of what's current, what's really going on as far as the American presidential elections are concerned, what's happening with Donald Trump. I've had people ask me, well, I thought Donald Trump is not contesting again. Well, not so fast. But when we come back from the break, we will address all this and more in a jiffy. We'll do this right after the break. Come back from the break. We'll start by taking you through what's ahead for the US presidential elections. There's a lot going on. We'll take our time and go through some details and really sort this out throughout the whole process. So we'll start from the basics, right? This is the 60th quadrennial presidential election, which means that they do have their elections every 4 years, just like we have in Ghana. And so there are a couple of parallels. What does this mean? Their election calendar is quite similar to Ghana. And there's a whole joke going around that when the Democrats win in the US, the NDC wins here. When the Republicans win in the US, the NPP wins here. But of course, that was torpedoed in the last election, so that theory really doesn't hold. But anyway, that's just fun fact or trivia, right? Not really based on theory or any research, but good fun fact to know. Okay, so this is the 60th time they're having it. As you know, Americans' democracy is over 200 years. They've been doing this for ages. Once again, they're going to get through another process, and the whole world's eye is on them. So who are the aspirants, in this election? Well, there are two major political parties in the US, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. They are the major ones. Of course, there are other minor parties, and I think a lot of people don't know about them. There's a Green Party, there's a Libertarian Party, and so many others. But anyway, the two major ones are the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, on your screen now, we have the candidates for the Republican Party, right? So they are the conservatives. They believe in free market, laissez-faire capitalism, libertarian ideals. They are anti-abortion and all of that. So those are the Republicans, the red party with the elephant as a symbol. The candidates former President Donald Trump, Donald J. Trump, J stands for John, Donald J. Trump. He's the former president, one-term president, lost the last elections, and he's running again. And the other candidate is former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. A very interesting candidate, Nikki, right there. She has been a governor before, a two-term governor of a major state in the U.S., South Carolina, the parliamentary state, they call it. So she does have a history of executive governance at the state level, and that's really rich experience. It was from there that she then went on to become the ambassador to the UN, working under Donald Trump, quite interestingly, working under Donald Trump for, I believe it was about a year or a little bit more, and then she resigned, and then now running for president. So it's quite interesting. A former member of Donald Trump's cabinet or executive now running against him. And the other interesting thing about Nikki Haley is that she's also the first female Indian American, okay, the first female of Indian origin who is running on a major presidential ticket. In fact, she was the first female governor of South Carolina and also the first female Indian American governor of any state at all. So that is the context within which Nikki Haley is running for this election. She does have some really solid political profile in the United States herself, Nikki Haley, giving Donald Trump a big challenge. And she's a very interesting character. You know, almost everybody has run out of the race. When they started, there were about 7 or 8 people running. Vivek Ramaswamy, Chris Christie, and on. Quite a number of people running for president. About 7, 8 of them. Each and every single one of them have dropped out, has now dropped out. And Nikki Haley is the only one who has not dropped out. And Donald Trump is so mad at her. He can't just understand it because he wants her to drop out so that he will just go on and take the nomination. But Nikki Haley says that she is not dropping out until every single American Republican cuts their vote before she drops out. So she's still in the race. So those are the Republican presidential candidates for you right there. Now we come to the Democratic side. The Democrats. Of course, the Democrats have an incumbent president. That is President Joe Biden. So you'd imagine that once you do have an incumbent, normally incumbents don't have anybody challenging them, right? So if you have an incumbent president, he goes for another term. But well, America being what it is, they do have challenges to an incumbent Democratic president. And that's kind of rare, actually, to be quite honest. But yes, they are challenging their own sitting president. And who are those? So we have the default candidate, that's Joe Biden, who's the current president, right? But the challenges the U.S. congressman from Minnesota, Dean Phillips. So Dean Phillips has a military background. He served in the U.S. Army, and he's had a kind of a renaissance where he believes that getting to the presidency is one of the ways in which he can serve his country. He says, yes, Joe Biden has come in, Joe Biden has done his best, but he doesn't believe that Biden is going far enough in terms of standing up for the American people. And so he thinks it's about time we get politicians of the old stock out and then bring in some new, fresh blood. So that's what he's building his candidacy on. But I do have to give the caveat that it's a very long shot candidate. He's not a very widely popular person in America. He's hardly known. Honestly, if you ask a lot of people, they really don't even know that there are people challenging Donald Trump. So he's a dark horse. It's a really, really long shot if there ever was one. But of course, he does have the right to compete against Joe Biden. Okay, still with the Democratic candidates, now we have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And I'm pretty sure that name rings a bell because, of course, the Kennedy name has a really, really long history in the U.S. and a very major one at that, right? From JFK himself and then his lineage, his brothers. You know, one of them became Attorney General, ran for president, even though he didn't get it. And then we had Eddie Kennedy, who was the really long-term Bullhorn, Massachusetts senator, one of the earliest people to have endorsed Barack Obama, giving a lot of life to his campaign. But anyway, that's history. Robert Kennedy is from that family, and he is now running to be president. But, you know, Robert, it's quite different. He's taking a very different line. First of all, you wouldn't expect that he would challenge his own sitting president, but he's doing that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that he's an anti-vaccine activist, which means he does not believe that vaccination would help to solve COVID-19, which is very strange because all over the world, it has been accepted that taking the COVID-19 vaccine is one of the major ways to help halt the spread of COVID-19. Now, here's the case. Somebody is actually saying that, no, we shouldn't take the vaccines because they don't serve any real purpose for us. Can you imagine that? And so that puts him on the fringe of American politics. Okay, so that's Robert F. Kennedy. Now there's Cornel West. Yeah, Cornel West is professorial, former professor of Harvard. A liberal icon, so to speak, is more on the extreme left. He's an extreme liberal. He doesn't really believe that Joe Biden is doing enough for racial equality. He doesn't believe he's doing enough for climate change. He doesn't believe he's doing enough for police brutality. You know, a lot of African Americans being killed and gunned down. So he doesn't think the measures of Joe Biden are far-reaching enough. So he decided that he would leave the corridors of the classroom and then go, actually he's still teaching, but also would run for president as well. So that's Cornel West for you, Professor Cornel West, a very, very renowned academic, you know, teaching at Harvard and other big universities in the United States. Then we have the physician, Jill Stein. She's not really well known as well, but she's somebody who has really big concerns about gender equality, female empowerment, believes that the era of Donald Trump really saw a drawback to women's rights, especially when it comes to abortion, and so feels she needs to be in that race to bring those issues to the front and center. So that's Jill Stein for you. Okay, so we are done with the candidates. But of course, we do know that the front runners will be Trump and Biden. Okay. So in order to get the nomination, for the Democratic Party, you need 1,968 delegates to become the presidential candidate. So as you can see now, Dean Phillips has 0. Joe Biden has 91. And that is because they've just had primaries about 3 states or so. And Biden won in all of them. Because naturally, I mean, in most countries in the world, when you have an incumbent president, you hardly have people challenging him, right? So that is why Joe Biden is leading, and the rest of them have 0.
There's a wide margin for him to cover, though.
Yes, there's still a wide margin.
968.
Yes, but you see, the fact of the matter is that nobody's really going to challenge their incumbent president. So even if you do, the delegates are not going to vote for you. So the fact of the matter is that Biden...
So from the word go, you know that Biden will...
Yeah, Biden will be the presumptive nominee. Okay. So that's the Democratic Party. We can safely say, of course. I mean, we don't know everything. So, but to the extent that where history is a precursor, we can say that Joe Biden would be the nominee. But you see, there are issues about the age of Joe Biden. Okay, his age, his cognitive abilities, and all of that. So it's not a home run. Anything can happen, especially as far as his health and other things are concerned. But technically speaking, he's the presumptive nominee. Okay, so let's move now to the Republican side. So for the Republican side, you need 1,215 delegates, okay, are needed to win the nomination. Donald Trump now has 63 delegates, and Nikki Haley has 17 delegates. Now, it is so because they voted so far in Iowa, they voted so far in South Carolina, they voted so far in New Hampshire. So 3 states. There are about 50 states in the U.S. So that's why we said at the beginning that they still have a long haul to go. And each of these states will be voting. Donald Trump won in Iowa, he won in New Hampshire, won in South Carolina, won in Nevada. Nikki Haley...
remind me, I thought Nikki Haley was a governor or so.
She's a former governor
of
South Carolina.
But Trump won there.
Sorry, South Carolina. Trump is leading in South Carolina.
Okay.
So that is it for the Republican side. So she has 17 delegates. So far. So let's move on. Okay, so this is what I was trying to say at the beginning, that it is likely that we are going to have the current president, Joe Biden, go against former President Donald Trump. But the caveat needs to be given that this is really still inconclusive. One of the major reasons which makes it inconclusive is that apart from the fact that several states are yet to vote, there is the big issue of the court cases hanging around the neck of Donald Trump. And people are saying that it's unlikely that somebody facing so many criminal, civil, federal cases in the court might come out as the candidate. And even if he does, he's going to come out really weakened. And so that is a huge concern for a lot of American voters. But you see, the interesting thing about it is that despite the over 91 felony charges that Donald Trump is facing, his support does not seem to be going down. He has as much support as he had in 2016, if not more. He's leading his contenders by leaps and bounds. The margin is so wide. And so one of the questions that we'll be exploring here is why Donald Trump still has such a huge appeal in the United States despite all the charges and the accusations that have been brought against him. In 2020, Joe Biden won that election, 51.3%. I believe that's on your screen now, 51.3% as against 46.8%. But the recent approval ratings has Joe Biden trailing Donald Trump, if you believe that. Yes. Of course, in some states, Biden is leading. In some states, Biden is leading Trump. But in the matchup, the general matchup, okay.
When you aggregate them together,
yes. When you aggregate
Trump
them
leads.
Together, Trump is leading. So this is the story. This is the story of the election.
Have we done something on vote buying? We know that Biden has to get how much? 1,800 and something. Trump in his party, you have to get 1,200 and something delegate to become the flag bearer, right? How is vote buying in that contest? Because there are a lot of people they need to meet. And how are they able to meet that so that we can put in a par to par with the Ghanaian contest?
Yeah. I mean, the issue of vote buying doesn't really come up in the US at all.
Okay.
I mean, there's some problems that are African problems. And some that are not. So it really doesn't come up there. But I think there's a little more ground to cover before we wrap up the introduction. So we can move to the next couple of graphics if we do have them, so that we can just cover the final grounds and then wrap up. So we've done a head-to-head matchup between the two of them. We've also done their lead in terms of the delegates. I think one thing that we also need to start thinking about is what is the nature of the court cases that he's facing. So there are four major ones. One of them has to do with the fraudulent business practices that he had in New York. And the charges that were brought against him over there is that he overestimated his business worth and engaged in some business practices.
So he sort of made it seem he was worth more than he actually is.
More than he actually is.
Okay.
In order to get some loans and other business profits. Okay, so that's the first one, and he was found guilty of that.
Okay.
So he was fined $355 million for that case. But only this morning I heard that he has asked that he should be given one more. The deadline should be extended by one more month in order to help him to pay for that. The other cases is one that has to do with the classified cases. He has some classified documents, American secrets that he took home. And so he's being charged against that. So we'll be following these court cases to see what comes out of it.
Interesting. But a lot of us in Ghana will be looking at how these candidates are able to meet all of these delegates without somebody's exchanging hands, so that we can learn from them in terms of how we can do it. But there's a lot more to learn from this. America Decides on the pulse. So to make a date with that. But thanks for being a part of us. There's more on myjoyonline.com. We'll leave you with LTS. Enjoy the rest of our shows.